Nikon has been on a roll over the last few years. The Z9 redefined what we expect from Nikon's flagship cameras. The Z8 brought that power into a smaller body in an unprecedented way, given the D850 was a bit of a monster but didn't replicate the abilities of D5 and D6 in the same way the Z8 does the Z9. And even the Z6 III has proven to be a solid step forward. But over the past year, something has changed. Nikon's innovation seems to have slowed down. What I mean by this is that we aren't seeing the same rapid development cycle we did when Expeed 7 first launched. Firmware updates are slowing down and in many ways becoming less major. Even the recent Z6 III and Z8 updates brought some appreciated video features. Yeah, it was only a minor update at heart. But is this a problem, or is it actually a sign that Nikon has reached a stable and mature phase in their technology development? In this video, we're going to explore why things have slowed down, what it means for future cameras, and why Nikon's next big moves might not be what you're expecting. Nikon's Expeed 7 processor was a massive leap forward. The Z9 was a game changer. It gave us Nikon's first stacked sensor, a true flagship mirrorless camera, and a processor fast enough to completely remove the need for a mechanical shutter. The Z8 followed, packing nearly all that power into a smaller body, and the ZF and Z6 III both carried Expeed 7 forward into lower price points. For the first time, Nikon had autofocus that could genuinely compete with Canon and Sony in the mirrorless era. It was a huge moment. But here's the thing. After that initial burst of development, things have started to slow down. And that's because it looks like Nikon has pushed Expeed 7 as far as it can go. The reason I believe this to be the case is based on firmware updates that have slowed down on Expeed 7. We saw this serious phase of development when the Z9 and Z8 launched, with iterative firmware updates adding features as we went. Significant updates with promised features a few months after the Z9's launch, with 12-bit video recording, frame indicator, plus many other features. And some months and years rolled on, and we saw Nikon add more, like auto capture, high-res zoom for video. The Z8 even received pixel shift shooting, creating colossal 180 megapixel images. But with the launch of the Z6 III last year, I don't think that camera is going to see many updates of its firmware, not ones that will add features beyond, for instance, compatibility with new lenses. Expeed 7 has been developed so far, it's just not feasible to eke that much more out of it. Plus, Nikon's going to have to shift its focus to something like the Expeed 8. We've seen the launch of the Z52, a camera I'm a huge fan of, and with Expeed 7, it's a fantastic upgrade on the Z50, so I expect we'll see a Z32 and a Z52, but those will probably launch with close to final firmware. Nikon has been here before. The Z6 and Z7 started to show their age, and Nikon didn't immediately jump to the Expeed 7 processor. Instead, they released the Z6 II and Z7 II using dual Expeed 6 processors instead. And while it gave those cameras a performance boost, it did not transform them. The autofocus improvements were minor, the processing speed gains were decent, I guess, but it wasn't the game changer people hoped for, including me. I think one of the biggest giveaways that dual Expeed 6 didn't deliver was limited firmware updates. There really weren't any advancements that came after the initial Z6 II and Z7 II launches, not like we saw with the Z6 and Z7. It's something that riled a few users up, especially me at the time, because I was hoping for so much more and just didn't receive it. And I think as a result of that experience of not being able to develop those cameras further, Nikon has learned from that. That's why we're not seeing dual Expeed 7 in a Z6 III or ZF or anything like that. Instead, it's pretty obvious Nikon's waiting for Expeed 8. I do wonder if this will be a bitter pill to swallow for Z6 III buyers, like it was for me with the Z6 II. I think Nikon has rightly got a reputation for supporting their cameras with significant updates, and the Z6 III is a serious camera that was launched to significant fanfare, especially for videographers. But it's not going to see loads of development. It's a pretty mature platform at this stage. Even those now buying the Z9 and Z8 might think, oh, they'll see loads of updates in the future, but they're not going to. So this allows us to look forward to the Expeed 8. What are we going to get? Well, first off, it's not coming in the Z6 IV or Z7 III. Expeed 8 is a flagship processor, and that means it's going to debut in the Z9 II first. Here's a realistic timeline. The Z9 II, probably not in 2025. Perhaps towards the end of the year at the absolute earliest, but more likely 2026. The Z8 II, not until at least 2027. So if you're waiting for a performance leap, Expeed 8 is where it's at, but it's going to take a little while to get there. But what kind of improvements could we see? Well, pure speculation on my part, but I wonder whether better power efficiency is going to be a focus. One of the weaknesses of modern mirrorless cameras is battery life. A more efficient processor could bring a big jump in stamina, and this is needed more so on cameras like the Z8 and the Z6 III, because the Z9 makes up for it with a larger battery. I wonder if we could see a move to efficiency in power cores as we have in modern laptops, giving Nikon the ability to keep the camera in a more efficient standby state, but without lag from going from standby to being in use. The other thing I expect we'll see is higher resolution EVFs and LCDs. Canon and Sony have already moved towards 9 million dot EVFs. Nikon's absolutely going to follow. Fast autofocus processing is the other thing that we expect to see. I mean, autofocus is going to be a big focus for all the camera companies, pun intended, and maybe even AI playing a role. And presumably we might start to see something like red raw file formats finding their way into the cameras for video. But then again, with Adobe recently announcing future compatibility with Nikon NRAW in Premiere, might not be needed. We'll have to watch this space. So while Expeed 8 is coming, it's still a bit of a way off. Now that doesn't mean that Nikon has been resting on its laurels. There's certainly a lot going on. Alongside the development that's undoubtedly going on for the Expeed 8 processor, Nikon has been aggressively expanding the Z-mount lens lineup. And at this point, most of the major gaps are filled. But does that mean they're done innovating? Obviously not. There's still a few areas that we could see some exciting new lenses. Tilt-shift lenses, for one. Nikon still has no native tilt-shift options for Z-mounts. Although it's a very specialised area, it could be interesting seeing Nikon offering these for Z-mount and putting some development into them. The other thing I wonder about is updated 24-70mm and 70-200mm 2.8 lenses. Sony and Canon have refreshed their pro zooms with better coatings, different materials, and revised optical formulas. Nikon's lenses are still fantastic, but it could be interesting to see what they could do with V2 versions. For instance, Canon has created some video-focused versions that perhaps we could also see Nikon emulating. Perhaps some f2 zooms would be fantastic. Sony has been pushing their ultra-fast zoom lenses like the 16-35 f2 and 24-50 f2. Nikon could follow suit. I'd love to see an equivalent to the incredible Canon 28-70 f2, which is one of the lenses I'd love to have on Z-mount. Every chance I get to use that on a Canon camera is an absolute delight, and it'd be cool to be able to use that on my Z8. I would also love to see more telephoto options. So Nikon has released great super telephoto lenses, but there aren't many affordable telephoto options at this point. So something to bridge the gap between the high-end S-line telephoto lenses and kit lenses would be good. We've seen Nikon adapt some of Tamron's designs for their standard zooms, but it would be interesting to see what Nikon's own design team could come up with when it comes to affordable telephotos. Nikon's camera development may have slowed down, but their lens roadmap has plenty of room for exciting new releases. Nikon's never really had a presence in the cinema world, not until their recent acquisition of Red anyway. And while Canon has the C70, C300 and C500 sort of range of cinema cameras, and Sony has the FX3, F6, FX6 and FX9, Nikon seemed to focus on hybrid cameras rather than dedicated video gear. But that's clearly starting to change. We've now got the Z-mount on the Red V-Raptor and Komodo X cinema cameras, and this is a huge move because it means filmmakers can use Nikon Z lenses natively on Red's professional cinema bodies. It's a clear sign that Nikon is starting to play a bigger role in the pro video space. And alongside that, Nikon has just launched their first cinema lens, the 28 to 135mm f4PZ. This is a power zoom lens designed specifically for video production. It shows Nikon's really serious about supporting filmmakers, and it suggests that we might see more dedicated Z mount cinema lenses in the future. I for one was excited to see a new form of gold ring find its way back onto Nikon's lenses. We've only really seen that on the super telephotos so far, so I wonder what kind of a range of cinema lenses we're going to get supporting that. So while Nikon isn't entering the cinema camera market directly, they're making moves that position them in the pro video world, first with Red adopting Z mount and now with serious glass for filmmakers. Nikon's slowdown in camera innovation is not a bad thing. It just means that we're at the end of the Expeed 7 cycle. The big leaps will come with Expeed 8, but in the meantime we're seeing Nikon expand its lens lineup and make moves into cinema. It's going to be interesting to see where we sort of go from that and whether there'll be any further major updates for Expeed 7 cameras, but I really don't think there's going to be much on that front. So what do you think? What should Nikon focus on when it comes to Expeed 8? Which features would really excite you? And would you be interested in more Z-mount cinema lenses? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks so much for watching. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye.